Alright YouTube, so we are back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and what we have today is we're discussing yet again Final Fantasy VII Remake and the PS5, but the possibility of getting some sort of reveal relatively soon, and when I say soon, I mean February. And this rumor comes to us courtesy of the ResetEra user Navtra, who we've used in the past and talked about in the past, and their track record so far, at least from what we've talked about, has been very, very credible. Some examples I can give are them correctly predicting the lineup for the Future of Gaming event and the PlayStation exclusive DLC for Marvel's Avengers. But more recently, they also revealed that Final Fantasy XVI was already in development and was supposed to already be revealed, and they weren't sure why it hadn't been yet. And then, not too long after this was, of course, that PS5 event where we did get the reveal for Final Fantasy XVI. So I wanted to put this at the beginning so that people know going into this that there seemed to be a relatively credible source. Now, again, I don't know their entire track record. I've only recently been seeing what this person talks about. But what we've covered here on the channel and discussed, they've been right so far. But also the PS5 possible reveal in February aside, Navtra also gives their thought, sort of an opinion on the new trademarks that we've talked about a few times already. And I think it's kind of an interesting take that I've not seen discussed yet, so we're going to look at that as well. So Navtra posted on Monday and said, Square announcements are piling up. We're getting 14's next expansions revealed next month, and 7R PS5 and Life is Strange 3 should be soon after. And of course somebody followed up with a question and said, any idea when we should be getting those announcements? I mean 7R for PS5, Life is Strange 3 and stuff. And Navtra replies with, thing is, talking when is tricky due to the current circumstances. Games that were targeting this quarter for release as late as last summer didn't even get trailers since. So I can never be too sure about when something is announced/released. With that said, I believe we're getting these announcements sometime in February. I just can't be 100% sure about it. So what they're saying right there is, as of summer of last year, summer 2020, the games that were supposed to release in this quarter sometime around this time have yet to even get trailers, so it's kind of hard to predict time frames of stuff. But they're still thinking that we're going to get something for all three of these things, 14, 7R PS5, Life is Strange 3, within February. But again, not 100% certain. And I'm assuming that'd be in reference to something COVID-related, obviously. If games are aiming to be released within this quarter, development's not what it would be. Normally, if the world was normal right now, you'd have, possibly hundreds of people in the studio at one time, depending on what the game is, of course. Which I do think makes a lot of sense. Video game development now isn't what it was a year ago. We've been dealing with this COVID shit for almost a year now. I don't like to talk about it too often here on the channel because you shouldn't have to deal with that shit. YouTube should be a distraction from the real world bullshit. But we've been dealing with this COVID stuff for about a year now, and obviously games can't be made the same way anymore. Working remotely, only however many fractions of people within the studio working on games. Shit takes a lot longer now, generally speaking. So older information that Navtra might have had from whoever their sources might not be as credible now. Not that Navtra's not a credible person, but just development maybe not going as smoothly as it normally would or should. Now, as for the concept of getting some sort of PS5 reveal within February for Remake, I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit, right? We're all expecting it 99.9999% certain that there's going to be a PS5 version of Remake at some point. Of course, some sort of definitive edition, which really just be a graphical upgrade, because usually definitive editions are the game looking better, also with the extra content, DLC, whatever. There is some extra content for Remake, but it's not DLC. There's not expansion packs and things like that. It's just random items and a couple small random summons, right? So, but we've all been expecting this PS5 version for a while now, so if that happens, it's not really a surprise. Now, does some sort of reveal for a PS5 version within February make any sort of sense? I mean, possibly. That'd be about 2 months, depending on what day the reveal is, before the exclusivity's up. Now, would you want to reveal it that early? Maybe to kind of garner hype. That way it gives people 2 months to get them a PS5, potentially. I think it could make sense. That gives people a couple months to get their hands on a PS5, save up the money for a PS5, find a store that has one for sale, or just save up the money to buy the game itself. And actually, on the topic of next gen, we always talk about Remake Part 1 coming to the PS5, but is there going to be some sort of exclusivity deal there, do you think? Or do you think that whenever the actual exclusivity deal is over for the PS4 version, and it goes out to other platforms and presumably next gen and stuff, do you think there's going to be a Series X version, or would it be exclusive to the PS5 for a set amount of time as well? Now, on to Navtra's take on the trademarks, and again, I've not seen anybody discuss this. I'm not saying nobody else has thought about this, but Navtra's take, for me, what I've seen is original, and I'll be honest with you guys, I think it makes the most sense so far, out of the ideas and theories that we've talked about and looked at. So this person says, thanks for the info, Navtra. Whilst you're here, though, should we be getting excited about any of these? Which, of course, is in reference to the new trademarks the other day. And Navtra replies with, I'm not sure what those are, to be honest. Ever Crisis sounds like it may be the umbrella name for the Remake project going forward, but that's just a guess. And let me explain why I believe this makes the most sense, at least so far, in regards to Ever Crisis. We know that Remake is the 5th installment within the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, right? We know that like Last Order is no longer canon or something like that, whatever it is. It's not a part of the compilation anymore. Remake replaced it. We know that everything within the compilation itself has a naming convention to it. One letter of the alphabet, the second word being C. AC, Advent Children, BC, Before Crisis, CC, Crisis Core, DC, Dirge of Cerberus, and now we get a trademark for something called Ever Crisis. And everything that does follow that naming convention is itself a part of the Final Fantasy VII compilation. One thing stands out, though. With Remake being the 5th part of the compilation itself, Final Fantasy VII Remake does not follow that naming convention. What does, however, is Ever Crisis. I've seen a lot of people discuss over the past, however many days it's been since these trademarks went live, that a lot of people do think that the First Soldier could be the subname for Part 2. We discussed this in the last video. We know going forward with at least Game 2 and beyond, that we're going to get a lot more of Sephiroth. We know that Part 2 is probably going to open up with a calm flashback, which is, of course, is going to give us a lot more Sephiroth. Sephiroth is the First Soldier. So I think it does make sense. So what if the First Soldier is the subname for Part 2, whether that's Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, Final Fantasy VII Remake The First Soldier, whatever it would be called. And what if Ever Crisis is just sort of like the blanket term, the umbrella term for all of the Remake games, so that it fits into the naming convention of the compilation itself? When you look at the story of Remake so far and what we think is happening overall, the term Ever Crisis, I think, is very fitting. Ever, forever, on some sort of cycle, never ending, right? And we've seen that within the singularity, there is the original game's Midgar, right? It's very distinctly the original game's Midgar. The Midgar within Remake itself looks vastly different. And the idea of repeating cycles could be why, Sephiroth has the knowledge that he does and how Aerith has the knowledge that she does. This stuff has happened before. So what if Ever Crisis is in reference to like this repeating cycle that seems to be happening when it comes to Gaia and the live stream and the planet or something like that? Or what if Ever Crisis is in reference, or just maybe Crisis in general, is in reference to Genova, Sephiroth, or both? Because as long as either of them exist or both of them exist, there's always a threat, always a crisis. We've seen, as long as there's a little bit of Genova left, Sephiroth can come back and have children. He's never really gone. And when it comes to everything that fits this naming convention, everything that is within the compilation for Final Fantasy VII, they are all single entities, single properties, right? Advent Children is a single movie. Dirge of Cerberus, Before Crisis, and Crisis Core are all solo games. Remake, which is a part of the compilation, is going to be however many games, and they don't fit the naming convention. But again, Ever Crisis does. I don't know, man. I think this makes the most sense. Like, I think this is, like, spot on. Until we have, like, more information on whatever these trademarks are. Like, this is my headcanon going forward. Ever Crisis is just all the Remake games. But, of course, my dudes, that is the video. I want to pass it off to you guys. What are your thoughts on us getting some sort of PS5 reveal within February for Remake Part 1? There is some sort of, like, orchestra thing happening within February that maybe they could have a reveal there. We've got a trailer before with Remake in 2019 with the Symphonic Reunion Tour, so it's possible that we could get something Remake related at this orchestra event. And of course, what are your thoughts on Ever Crisis possibly being like the overall term for the Remake games within the compilation itself? Either way, that's the video, my dudes. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. We'll update more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter at dashingdavidYT. I'm a Discord. The links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Low Gain, or leave it like Cobain.